Welcome, dear one, tonight. We don't just listen, we learn through quiet stories, simple stories, like pebbles tossed into a still pond. The ripples are not loud, not urgent, but they reach far, far enough to touch a place in us that still remembers how to be quiet. It is night in the city of Rajagaha. The moon has risen, veiled by a thin mist that settles low over the stone streets. In the wealthy quarter, lamps still flicker in some courtyards, and servants move like shadows, finishing the day's duties. The scent of jasmine clings to the garden walls, and from deep within a walled estate, incense drifts upward, its smoke spiraling through carved eaves like an unseen offering. In a high pavilion of lacquered wood and gold leaf, a man sits alone. He is not old, but there is weariness in his posture, not from labor, his hands are too soft for that, but from the kind of heaviness that comes when the days have been long and full, yet the nights stretch empty. His name is Bahadia, though none speak it without adding the rich. It is a name weighted with reputation, patron of festivals, donor of monastic robes, collector of rare things. Gold glimmers from his wrists, but it does not warm him. Jewels line the walls, but they do not listen. Even the bronze bell beside his seat, once rung for poetry and guests, now echoes only for servants. And yet tonight, he does not call them. He lets the bell sit silent. In front of him, a ledger lies open, an inventory of recent purchases. He skims the list, but does not read it. What he seeks cannot be tallied. His gaze drifts to a window where the curtain breathes with the wind. Somewhere beyond, a dog barks. Somewhere further, a chant rises from the hills, a low, melodic voice carried from the monastery at Veluvana Grove. He has given to that monastery often, endowed its marble basin, funded its new stone gate, and yet he has never truly entered it. He has always sent others. He recalls a moment earlier in the day. A boy in the marketplace had bowed to him, eyes full of wonder. "May I grow up to be like you?" the boy had said. Bhadia had smiled, given him a coin. But the words echoed now not with pride, but discomfort, like being mistaken for someone you are not. The incense burns lower. Bhadia leans forward, as if trying to peer beyond the flame. He thinks of his childhood before the wealth, before the name, when he and his brother shared a single mat and a single dream to live without fear, not of hunger, not of others, not even of dying. And yet now, wrapped in brocade, he fears all of it. Hunger of the spirit, the judgment of others, the quiet emptiness of this chamber and of his life if he were to stop acquiring, stop controlling, stop being Padia the rich. Outside, the wind stirs the bell gently, though no hand touches it. Its chime is light, barely audible, but Padia hears it. It is not a summons, but a whisper, a call not outward, but inward, and for the first time in many nights, he does not reach for the wine. He does not rise to pace. He simply sits there, still, not at peace yet, but close enough to notice its absence. Morning does not rush into Bhadia's estate. It slides in slowly, through half-drawn shutters and over stone steps, still cool with dew. Birds call from hidden branches. The kitchen stirs, but Bhadia is already awake, already dressed, not in silk today, but in simple cotton, something lighter, something quieter. He steps out alone, passing through the garden gate, where hibiscus lean into the sun, their petals heavy with color and silence. Beyond his garden wall lies the old well. It was there before his estate was ever built, dug by hands long forgotten. Villagers still come early in the day to draw its water, and this morning so does a stranger. He is seated by the well, legs crossed, palms resting lightly on his knees, a monk unmistakably by the folds of his robe and the way he breathes, as if the very act of drawing in air were a form of reverence. He is not young, not old. Dust clings to the hem of his robe, yet his presence is clean, like water freshly drawn. He nods to Bhadia, not low, not with deference, but with ease, as one nods to the sun or a passing bird. Padilla hesitates, then nods back. It is not something he often does. The monk lifts the rope from the pulley and lowers the bucket. Its wooden weight creaks as it descends, then splashes softly below. When it rises, he doesn't drink first. He dips his fingers in, offering the surface a pause, watching the ripples, as if they were more precious than the water itself. Then he drinks, not hurriedly, as if the coolness on his lips and the quiet in his bones were no different from the blessing of a sunrise. Padilla watches, drawn into stillness. "You're far from the city center," he says, breaking his own silence. The monk smiles. Far from noise is not far at all. Padilla almost chuckles, but not with amusement, more with recognition, the way one responds to a truth they once knew but forgot along the way. He wants to ask more. Where are you from? What order are you with? What texts do you study? But those questions feel loud, too sharp for this morning. So instead, he sits down on the stone beside the well, not beside the monk, just nearby, close enough to be quiet together. Time passes without measure. The monk doesn't speak unless spoken to. He doesn't fidget, doesn't reach for anything. The breeze moves his robe gently, like a flag signaling peace, and Bhadia, without quite meaning to, begins to notice things he used to overlook: the glisten of water on stone, the hum of bees above the garden wall, the warmth of the rising sun finding his back. These are not luxuries, not possessions, but they hold him. Eventually, the monk stands. He bows not low, not long, just enough. And then he walks, barefoot on the road, robes trailing softly like a thought no longer clung to. Padilla does not follow, nor does he summon anyone to ask who the monk was. There is nothing to investigate, only something to remember. And in the well's reflection, Padilla glimpses himself not as Padilla the rich, but simply a man sitting by water, watching the world ripple gently outward. That evening, the sun sets behind a veil of soft clouds, and a cool hush settles over Badia's estate. The servants, sensing their master's quiet mood, move with softer steps. No guests arrive, no music plays. The golden screens remain folded. Badia walks alone. He does not head toward the banquet hall, nor the chambers lined with scrolls and silk. Instead, his feet carry him to the oldest part of the estate, the back storerooms, where thick wooden doors guard objects long out of use. The lamps here are dimmer. Dust dances in the light, like fine ash, stirred by the gentle draft of evening. He lights no flame. He walks slowly, guided by memory. Years ago, when the estate was smaller and he was still new to wealth, a fire broke out. It began with an overturned lantern in the eastern granary, a small mistake that grew into a wall of flame before anyone noticed. Servants panicked. Treasures were hauled out in heaped scrolls, vases, bolts of imported cloth. Everyone rushed to save what was shiny, what was rare. Padias, too, shouted orders, directed hands, cursed the wind. But there was one man, a servant named Dana, who did not run to the treasures. Instead, Dina ran toward the kitchens, where the fire was moving fast. He knew the cook was still inside, trapped by the fallen beam. No one else had thought to look. Bahadia remembered standing there, clutching a box of ivory combs, watching Dana vanish into the smoke. He had screamed for him to come back, cursed him for being a fool, but the man did not return until he emerged with the cook, coughing, scorched, weeping but alive. The fire was controlled by nightfall. The eastern granary was lost. So was the cook's hair and Dana's left eye. When Badia approached him later, he had offered silver and said, "You should not have risked your life for a servant." And Dina, still bandaged, had said, "Neither should a man risk his soul for a comb." Badia stops now in front of a locked door. He unbars it slowly and steps inside. The room is cool and dark. Wooden chests line the walls, filled with relics he no longer remembers collecting, scrolls whose languages he never learned, robes worn once, gifts from kings he never visited twice. He kneels in the center, dust brushing his knees. His hands hover over the latch of a chest, then pull back. Not because he fears what's inside, but because, for the first time, he does not feel the need to open it. A single candle burns in the corner, left by a servant earlier in the day. Its wax has pooled wide and shallow, as if it too is learning to let go. Padia watches its flame sway gently. The smoke from the wick curls upward, then dissolves. Nothing clings to it, nothing needs to. He thinks of Dana, now long gone, thinks of the moment he first called him back into service after the fire, not with praise, not with apology, but with a robe and coin, as if kindness were a transaction. Yet Dana had bowed anyway and returned to work without bitterness. That night, Padia had wondered why. Tonight, he begins to understand. Some fires destroy, others reveal, and the fire in his chest, the one that had roared for more, always more, is quieter now, not gone, but gentle, like ashes falling in silence, settling where greed once burned. Night returns without ceremony. In his chamber, Bahadia sits once more beneath a single lamp, but the room no longer feels grand nor lonely. The carved panels no longer whisper of all he owns. They breathe with a quiet that matches the stillness in his bones. He wears the same simple cotton as before. No jewels press into his wrist. No burdens press into his chest. The lamp before him flickers. Its flame is not eager. It does not leap or strain. It burns just enough to be seen, just enough to warm, and Badia watches it, not as a possession, but as a teacher. He remembers something the monk at the well had said before walking away softly, almost in passing. "Let your fire burn gently." At the time, Badia had nodded without understanding. Now, in the silence of his chamber, he feels its truth settle over him like a shawl. Not all fires are for destruction. Some are for presence, for warmth, for seeing just what is in front of you, nothing more. He closes his eyes. There is no fear in him now, not of loss, not of opinion, not of the morning. There is no longing to add anything more to his name. He breathes in, slowly, fully, then lets it go. Outside, the first light of dawn brushes the roof tiles. The city has not yet stirred, but the birds have begun their hymns. In the servants' quarters, a boy yawns and stretches, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He is new to the household, thin and eager, tasked with morning errands. And today, he holds in his hands a clay bowl, a monk's alms bowl mistakenly left in the garden the day before, forgotten during Badia's silent walk. The boy does not know who it belonged to, only that it is not his, and something in him says it must be returned. So he tucks it under his arm and begins to walk toward the road, barefoot, heart steady. He does not yet know what waits for him on the path ahead, only that a bowl like a promise should not be kept by those it does not belong to. And so begins another quiet journey, another small awakening, one step at a time, under the same soft sky. Let us follow him now, this boy with the bowl, into the next story, where even the smallest act can open the way to the Dharma. In the heart of the city, where mango trees leaned over tiled roofs and sandalwood smoke curled through narrow streets, there lived a woman whose name opened doors and closed mouths. Kema, scholar, speaker, and swift critic of any who dared offer a teaching untested by her mind. She did not shout, she did not insult, but her words sliced neatly, like silk drawn taut, then cleanly cut. The way she tilted her head, the pause before her replies, these were weapons in themselves. She debated with merchants, monks, philosophers, and poets. None unnerved her, none remained undefeated. Her presence in a room shifted the air, not with charm, but with sharpness. She was not cruel, but precise, and she was never uncertain. In courtyards and tea houses, they spoke of her with admiration and fear. She made the elder of Jedavana fumble. Even the king's advisor avoids her questions. Her mind is like fire you cannot approach without sweating. And yet, behind the words of awe lay a thread of unease. Because while Kema answered every question, no one quite knew what she was seeking. Perhaps not even she did. At night, she would sit in her chamber, the oil lamp casting gold across scrolls and carved furniture, rereading texts she'd long since memorized. She did not seek comfort. She sought flaw, weakness, contradiction, and when she found it, she would write a new question in the margin, sharp and black as inked stone. But something had shifted lately, not visibly, not even consciously, a restlessness that no clever phrase could soothe. Her victories in debate felt thinner now, like paper pressed between the fingers. The silences after her words grew longer, not in reverence, but in the echo of something unfinished. One evening, in the shaded hall of a small gathering, she dismantled a visiting teacher's metaphor on desire in 4 sentences. The audience chuckled, the teacher bowed, but as she walked home under the lamplit sky, her feet moved slower, and a question rose. one that startled her not because it was hard, but because it was new. If I've silenced them all, why am I still speaking? She shook it off, but it followed her into her dreams, where conversations unraveled into dust, into her waking hours, where the thrill of cleverness began to wear thin. And just when that question had begun to whisper most insistently, an invitation came from a quiet noblewoman, known more for her stillness than her speech. She approached Kayama not with challenge, but with gentleness, and offered only this: the Buddha will speak at the grove tomorrow. No one will argue with you there, but you may hear something not meant to be answered. Kama raised an eyebrow. You think he can teach what I haven't already dismantled? I think he may not try. That night, Kama could not sleep, not from excitement, not from fear, but from the still echo of those words. He may not try. And before the sun rose, before the street vendors laid out their baskets, before the city stirred, she stepped out with her walking stick, not as a conqueror, but as one who for once had no speech prepared. The grove lies just beyond the city, where the walls thin and the air carries the scent of grass and open sky. Dawn stretches itself across the treetops, soft and pale, as Kama walks the path in silence. The morning is not yet warm, and dew clings to her hem. She moves with purpose, but not with the usual tightness in her stride. Today, her destination is not a courtroom, nor a library, nor the garden of a rival teacher. It is a forest clearing and a man she has never met. She has heard much of him, the Buddha. Some say he speaks like water, over stone calm, inevitable. Others say he says little at all, letting silence fill the gaps where questions usually dwell. Kama has debated his students. She has read fragments of his teachings. To her, they seemed elegant but soft, beautiful but incomplete. Compassion, detachment, stillness, words that circle like birds but do not strike. She had prepared arguments once, in case she ever met him, proofs, refutations, parables of her own, but now, walking toward the grove, she carries none of them, not out of reverence, but because something in her simply paused. She arrives. There are no banners, no stage, only a wide patch of earth where others sit cross-legged beneath the filtered morning light. Their robes are faded, their expressions quiet. They do not chant, they do not rise to greet her. She is accustomed to eyes turning when she enters a space. Here, no one looks. It is not dismissal, it is inclusion that asks for nothing in return. She finds a place at the edge and folds her legs beneath her. The bark of the tree behind her is rough against her spine, but it holds. Then he steps forward, not grandly, not with drama, simply walking, a tall figure in plain robes, no ornaments, no attendants. His head bowed slightly, his pace unhurried. The rustle of his movement barely stirs the air. When he sits, it is as if he has always been seated. His presence alters nothing, and yet it settles everything. He does not introduce himself. He does not scan the crowd. He begins speaking, not as if to a room, but as if into the world itself. The mind seeks what it already clings to, he says. It desires its own echo, but when it meets stillness, it becomes confused, not because stillness is wrong, but because stillness does not agree. Kema's ears sharpen. The phrasing is simple, but the tension beneath it tightens. She expects elaboration, definition, a defense, but he says nothing more. The silence that follows is not empty. It's shaped, like a bowl turned upward. Another voice, someone nearby, asks softly, "Then how do we know what is true?" The Buddha looks up. That which does not tremble when examined, that which needs no defense. Kema leans forward slightly, not to interrupt, not yet, but to watch the architecture of his words. She is waiting for the moment where logic cracks, where softness avoids the hard edge of reason. She is certain it will come. But the words that follow are not evasions. They are not declarations. They are something else. He tells a story of a woman who kept filling her jar with water, even when it was already full, because she feared the moment it would be empty again. She poured and poured until her home was soaked, and she stood weeping in a flood of her own making. Kema hears it, not just the story, the pause at the end, the choice not to explain it. She does not yet know why, but something inside her stops preparing its next reply. The grove holds its stillness like a breath, gently sustained, not rigid, not held, but simply present. The birds in the canopy do not sing loudly here. The wind moves like a thought almost remembered, brushing leaves, but never disturbing. Kema sits among others, but she feels alone in the way a person can feel when the world has grown quiet enough to hear the turning of their own thoughts. The Buddha's voice continues, not rising, not falling, but steady, like a stream that does not rush yet never stops. His teachings come not as arguments, but as offerings, each sentence laid down like a pebble on a path. None demand agreement, none defend themselves. He does not point to gods, nor to rules. He does not appeal to fear or reward. He does not promise, he simply speaks. There is a fire that consumes, he says, but there is also a fire that warms. The same flame. What changes is how tightly we hold it. Kema listens. Her mind sharpens, not out of habit now, but out of curiosity. She probes the idea, turning it like a gem in her palm. In the past, this is where her tongue would strike at the ambiguity, the softness. She would ask, and who decides which fire is which? She would press him to declare, to define, to build a wall she could climb or tear down. But she does not ask. Not yet. Instead, she watches, not just the man, but the silence around his words, the way the others breathe a little slower when he pauses, the way no one leans forward to interrupt. It is not reverence that holds them. It is something quieter, familiarity, maybe, or recognition, like they're not learning something new, but remembering something that was always within reach, if only they had grown still enough to hear it. She realizes then she has been waiting for contradiction, for the slip, the vulnerable thread to tug, but his words offer no edge, not because they are perfectly crafted, but because they do not resist. They don't brace themselves to be tested. They don't hide from scrutiny. They simply are. He tells another story of a musician who tightened her strings too much in search of the perfect sound until they snapped, and then loosened them too far until no song remained, and how, in learning balance, she stopped trying to master the instrument and instead began to listen to it. Kama closes her eyes for a moment, not from boredom, but because something inside her ripples, a quiet stirring. She's heard better parables, more intricate metaphors, but this one feels different. It leaves room. It leaves space for her not to conquer it, but to step inside it, unarmed. When she opens her eyes, the Buddha is looking not at her, but through the trees, as if speaking with the morning light itself. There is nothing to win, he says, almost as if to himself, only what is lost when we try too hard to win. And at that, something in Kema falters, a tiny shift, like a sword long polished, long drawn, finally lowered to the ground without sound. The wind sighs through the grove as the Buddha finishes speaking. No grand conclusion, no call to action, no closure, just silence. It lingers like mist in a valley, neither heavy nor light, simply there. Kama sits in it. She does not move, not because she's frozen by revelation, not because she agrees, but because for the first time, her mind has nothing to push against. There's no statement demanding to be refuted, no logic begging to be unthreaded, no arrogance inviting her sharpness to strike. And in the absence of resistance, her voice has nowhere to go. She feels it, first in her hands, usually poised, fingers always ready to lift, gesture, emphasize. Now they rest quietly on her knees, motionless. She doesn't even remember placing them there. Her shoulders, once drawn with tension, prepared to parry, defend, have lowered. Her breath is deep, and she hadn't noticed. She searches for the question that usually arrives in these moments, the one she hurls forward like a spear, the question that shows her strength, but none come. Instead, something else surfaces, a memory. Her father, years ago, sitting by the river at dusk. He was a quiet man, easily overlooked in her childhood brilliance. But she remembered how, one evening, he had held a cracked clay pot in his lap, dripping slowly from its side. She had scoffed, "Throw it out, it leaks." He had smiled gently, not condescendingly, and replied, "It holds water long enough for what I need." She hadn't understood then. She does now. The Buddha turns to look toward her not piercingly, not seeking to draw her in, but as one who simply notices. Their eyes meet. She opens her mouth, not to challenge, not to teach, not to demonstrate, just to ask. But the question evaporates before it forms. What remains is breath. For a flicker of a moment, shame arises sharp, automatic, familiar, the part of her that measures worth by performance, that fears silence will be mistaken for ignorance. But it passes quickly, like a bird landing and taking flight again, because no one is watching her with expectation. No one here is waiting to see her fail or succeed. They are simply here, present, and she is too. She bows her head not to him, not as a gesture of surrender, but as a bow to the silence itself, to the space that has opened up within her. It is vast, not empty, but uncluttered, and in that space, she feels something she has not felt in a long, long time. Not brilliance, not clarity, but peace. For a woman who had spent her life mastering the blade of words, This moment is not defeat, it is freedom, the freedom of not having to speak to be whole. And when the Buddha turns his gaze elsewhere, she remains bowed not in shame, but in stillness, the kind of stillness that does not ask to be seen, only to be understood. When the gathering ends, there is no applause, no parting words. The Buddha stands slowly, and the others do the same, robes rustling like wind in tall grass. Some bow, some remain seated, some drift away like petals loosening from a branch not scattered, just carried. Kema does not speak. She rises with care, her hands brushing the folds of her robe, and steps away from the circle with the grace of someone no longer trying to be seen. Her feet, bare beneath the hem, press lightly into the earth. The road is still the same one she came on, but she no longer walks it with the armor of questions strapped to her mind. She carries nothing now but silence, and strangely, it feels like enough. The city waits beyond the trees, the courtyards, the whispering crowds, the eager students who await her cleverness, like birds waiting for grain. They will ask what she thought of the Buddha, what flaw she found, what silence she shattered, and perhaps she will answer them, but not today. Today, her sharpness has turned inward, not as judgment, but as inquiry, a softer kind, one that does not demand an answer, just presence. As she passes beneath the branches, a breeze catches the edge of her scarf, lifting it like a curtain drawn back from a window. Light spills through, not dazzling, just enough to walk by. She does not know where this path leads not fully, but she knows it no longer curves toward victory. It moves toward something quieter, wiser, less concerned with being heard, more concerned with hearing. Far from the grove, in another monastery on another morning, a man sweeps the stone floor with a straw broom. His robes are simple, his steps are slow. He has no disciples, no titles, no debates. But there is something in the way he sweeps a kind of peace, not taught by words, but by repetition, by devotion, by love of the ordinary. He is called many things by the other monks. Some say he's only the janitor. Others say he's more awake than any teacher they've known. He does not speak much, but every day the path he sweeps is clear. Let us go to him now, this humble monk, with dustless feet. Let us follow his rhythm, his stillness, his way of being. For sometimes, the greatest teachings are left behind in footprints, and the cleanest path is the one no one notices, because it has already been walked with care. This is the story of the janitor monk, no dust on the path. Before the bell rings, before the crows begin their chorus in the mango trees, before the first rice pot boils or a robe is lifted from its peg, he is already awake. In the soft darkness, just before dawn, a quiet monk rises. He does not wake others. He does not chant aloud. He does not recite long verses or open sacred texts. He picks up his broom. It is not a special broom. Its bristles are uneven, the handle worn smooth by time and touch. It leans in the same corner every night and returns to it every evening, like a friend who never demands attention but is always there when needed. He sweeps, not in great arcs, not with speed or flair. He begins at the southern gate, where the banyan roots creep near the path, and moves slowly toward the central courtyard. His robe brushes the ground gently, the sleeves sometimes catching the early dew. He does not rush. He does not look behind. His gaze rests a few steps ahead, watching the dust rise, then settle. The strokes of his broom are steady. Left, right, lift, left, right, lift, like breath made visible. Most monks pass him without words. They bow if they meet his eyes, but often they do not see him at all, not truly. He is not a teacher, not an elder, not one of the great voices who recites sutras before the assembly. Some call him the janitor monk. Some whisper that he once lived a different life, one of wealth, or war, or brilliance, and simply chose silence. But he offers no stories, no history, only the rhythm of a broom across stone. The novices, wide-eyed and restless, sometimes watch him from the steps, whispering jokes or guessing at his thoughts. But even they grow quiet when he nears, not from fear or from something harder to name. A stillness that trails him like a shadow, a peace that doesn't announce itself, but changes the space it enters. The abbot once said, "He is like the wind through the leaves. If you stop trying to catch it, you'll begin to hear it." And truly, there is something in his sweeping that is more than labor. It is a ritual without scripture, a devotion without form. He sweeps not because the path is always dusty, but because it is always walked. His task is not to erase footprints, but to honor them. Each morning, the stone glistens faintly in his wake, and for a few breaths, before the world stirs again, the path is quiet, open, waiting. No one thanks him. He never asks. But beneath the rising sun, as light catches the clean line of earth behind him, there is no doubt someone has walked this way with care. It is a young novice who finally asks the question, not out of challenge, not with defiance, just quiet wonder, the kind that children carry before the world teaches them to hide it. The morning bell has rung. The monks file into the hall. Rice bowls clink softly. Feet shuffle in practiced rhythm. But the novice lingers in the garden, where the old monk has just passed, his broom now resting once more in its corner, as if it never moved. The path is swept clean. Even the leaves seem to have fallen differently here, as though reluctant to land where such care has been laid down. The boy approaches, bare feet light on the stones. He bows, uncertain how to begin, and then speaks as if releasing something he's carried for days. "Venerable, you sweep every morning before any of us rise, but you never teach. You never speak in the hall. Why?" The monk does not answer right away. He turns his gaze toward the path behind them, where the sunlight falls across stone and earth, glinting faintly like morning dew. The silence stretches not as delay, but as part of the answer. Finally, he smiles, not wide, just enough. "I sweep," he says, "because the dust returns." The novice blinks, but that doesn't explain why you don't teach. The monk's eyes rest on the boy, kind, patient, not avoiding the question, but not rising to it either. He bends slightly and brushes his hand across the stone. A small puff of dust rises, even now, even after sweeping. Do you see, he says, even when you sweep with care, the dust is never fully gone. That is the nature of the world, but we sweep anyway. The boy looks at his own feet, then at the stone, then back at the monk. But what does that teach? The monk chuckles softly, and it is the gentlest sound the boy has heard all week, like water catching sunlight in a still pool. You ask good questions, he says. Keep asking. Just know that not every answer wears robes or sits on a high seat. He picks up the broom and leans it once more in the corner. Sometimes, he adds, the teaching waits for you in the path you're already walking. Then he walks away, not with finality, but with ease, as if the question had not ended, only begun to unfold. The novice stays there a while, eyes on the stone, the place where the dust rose and fell again. He thinks of chanting, of scriptures, of lectures he has heard from the elders, and yet none have lingered in his chest like this moment, this answer that wasn't an answer. That night, he dreams not of books or sermons, but of a broom moving slowly across a path at dawn, each sweep making no claim, no noise, only a space clear enough for others to walk. The days pass, and with them, the novice begins to notice things he had never paid attention to before. Not grand teachings, not ceremonies, just the path. He starts waking earlier, not because he's told to, but because something in him wants to see it, wants to witness the quiet, deliberate ritual of the janitor monk before the rest of the monastery stirs. He hides behind the tamarind tree near the southern gate, crouching just enough to stay unseen, but close enough to hear the soft scrape of bristles on stone. Left, right, lift, left, right, lift. The rhythm is always the same, as if the monk were playing a melody only the earth could hear. Sometimes the path is clean already, washed by the night's rain. Sometimes fallen blossoms litter it, bright as fire against gray stone. Sometimes it is only dust, dry and clinging. But no matter the condition, the monk never hesitates. He sweeps with the same care, the same attention, as though it were not about the dust. As the days lengthen into weeks, the novice begins to see it, not just the act of sweeping, but the way it is done. The monk's hands do not rush. His feet fall lightly, with balance. His eyes stay focused only on the stretch of ground before him, never chasing what has passed, never skipping ahead. And slowly, the boy understands the teaching was never in the answer. It was in the walk, in the doing, in the quiet. One morning, curiosity overwhelms reverence. Why always the same path, the boy asks, stepping out from his hiding place. You never sweep the temple stairs, never the garden, only this one path. The monk pauses, not surprised, not bothered. He leans on the broom and looks down the line of clean stone behind him. This is the path the others walk most. He says, it is not special, but many feet pass through it. The boy frowns. Then why not ask others to help? Wouldn't it be easier? The monk's eyes soften. Easier is not always better. When you do a thing with your own breath, your own hands, it becomes part of you, and the world feels that. He doesn't explain further. He doesn't need to. He continues sweeping. Left, right, lift. The novice watches, and this time, he doesn't see labor. He sees devotion, a conversation with the earth beneath, spoken without words. He thinks of all the teachings he's copied in the scriptorium, how many words he's memorized, how many sermons he's sat through trying to understand impermanence, effort, humility. But here, in the slow arc of a straw broom across stone, he sees it. Effort without ambition, service without self, care without seeking praise. The monk does not look up. He sweeps. And the boy, standing there in the first light of morning, begins to bow not in ritual, not for form, but from a place deeper than understanding, a place that recognizes something rare, something real, a path that teaches not by proclaiming, but by being walked with love. The rains had come quietly in the night, falling soft as breath on the rooftop tiles, soaking the garden earth until it sighed. By morning, everything is hushed. The air holds the scent of wet stone and jasmine shaken loose in the storm. The novice wakes early, as he does now, without being called. Habit has become something gentler than duty, something like reverence. He slips from his mat and tiptoes past the other sleepers, out into the silver blue of the morning air. He waits behind the tamarind tree, but today, something is different. The path is clean, no dust, no fallen leaves, no footprints. The rain has wiped everything smooth, like a fresh page untouched by ink. Still, the monk arrives. His robe is damp at the hem, clinging slightly to his ankles. His sleeves drip quietly as he picks up the broom. The novice leans forward, curious. Surely today he will rest. There is nothing to sweep. But the monk begins, as always. Left, right, lift, left, right, lift. Over stone that needs no cleaning. The novice steps forward, unable to help himself. Venerable, he whispers, "There's nothing there." The monk pauses, mid-sweep, and looks at the boy not with correction, not with amusement, but with the same quiet presence he offers the path. He taps the broom lightly against the ground. "I do not sweep only the dust," he says. "I sweep the mind that notices it." The boy blinks. His hands fall still. The stone beneath them glistens. The air smells of sky and earth together. The monk continues. His pace does not change. His breath remains slow. He does not need dust to justify the motion. It is not about cleaning. It is about contact, about presence, about touching the world without needing to fix it. The novice stands a long time that morning, no longer hiding, no longer asking, just watching, listening, not to the broom, but to what stirs inside him as it moves. Later, when the sun rises and the monastery awakens, others walk the path. None comment on its cleanliness. None know that it had been swept at all. They simply pass over it, unaware of how carefully it was prepared for their feet. And the novice, now seated at the edge of the courtyard, begins to understand something he could never have learned from texts alone, that practice is not about performing when needed. It is about becoming someone who doesn't need a reason to be present. That morning, the path taught without being dusty, and the monk, without explaining, had spoken something truer than words. The boy looks down at his own hands, then at the corner where the broom rests once more. And though he does not yet reach for it, something in him leans toward it. Not to clean, but to understand. Seasons pass like drifting incense, smoke slow, soft, unnoticed, until one day the air simply smells different. The janitor monk grows older. His steps, once smooth and even, become slightly shorter. The broom is heavier now, though he does not say so. His hands are more worn, the joints less quiet, but his rhythm never changes. Left, right, lift, left, right, lift. The novice has grown too, taller now, steadier in his step, his voice deeper but less eager to speak. He no longer hides behind the tamarind tree. Sometimes he walks beside the monk, sometimes behind, and sometimes he sweeps. But never instead. One morning, the old monk does not appear. The broom rests in its corner, untouched. The path holds the prints of yesterday's feet, and the novice, now nearly a monk himself, stands at the threshold of the southern gate, waiting longer than he needs to. No one says the words. No announcement is made, but silence carries its own messages. He bows low to the empty path, not in sorrow, but in gratitude. Then he picks up the broom. It fits into his hands easily, not because it is light, but because his grip no longer demands control. He begins to sweep, not perfectly, not like his teacher, but with care. Others pass by, as they always have. Some notice, most don't, and that's all right. Because the path is not swept for recognition. It is swept because someone will walk it. Because someone always does. And with each stroke, each movement, the novice finds he is no longer imitating. He is remembering, not words, not lessons, but presence. And the path, though quiet, remembers too. There is no statue built for the janitor monk, no verse chanted in his name, but the morning breeze still moves through the courtyard, just as it did when he walked there. The leaves still gather in the same places, and the silence he left behind is not empty. It is full of footsteps that paused, of breaths that deepened, of hearts that softened not from being taught, but from being witnessed. And the stone path, swept now by different hands, carries no dust, only kindness. Now, dear one, let the broom fall still, let the dust settle. You do not need to clean the whole world to find peace. You only need to care for the small piece of earth beneath your feet. Let your thoughts drift like leaves caught in a morning breeze. No grasping, no resistance, just motion, then stillness. Let your breath sweep softly through you, left, right, in, out. The teachings are not far. They are in your footsteps, in your hands, in the path you walk, without needing to be seen. The monk is gone, but his presence remains in the way we care, in the way we move, in the way we learn to sweep, even when no one asks. There is a bend in the forest path where the trees grow wide and low, their branches reaching like arms, half lowered in reverence. The air there is thick with the scent of bark, soil, and time. Few pass this way without reason once. It was known as a dangerous road, a place where travelers clutched their satchels tighter and quickened their pace. There are no watchtowers here, no walls, no guards, only a clearing where the path widens slightly and a monk who sits beneath a leaning tree. He is called Sankika. No one remembers when he arrived. One day, the bend in the road was as it always was, dull, silent, feared. The next, there was a saffron figure sitting quietly beneath the shade. He does not beg. He does not preach. He sits, eyes open, but not searching, spine straight, but never stiff, palms resting one upon the other in his lap like the surface of still water. Those who pass him feel something they cannot explain. Some avert their eyes. Some glance back long after they've gone beyond him. Children grow curious, then shy. Birds, oddly, seem to perch nearer when he is near, as though his stillness smooths the space between wind and branch. The older villagers speak of him in low tones. The monk who never flinches, they say. The one the bandits left alone. It's true, though, this road was once marked by blades and sudden cries. No one has dared disturb Sankika, not out of fear, not even respect, but something else, something that makes even the cruelest pause, as if stepping through smoke only to find themselves breathing a different kind of air. No signs mark his place, no stones are arranged to announce a boundary, and yet this patch of forest has become a kind of gate unseen, unnamed, but real. Those who pass it do not always understand what has changed, only that they leave with their voices softer, their footsteps slower. A merchant once stopped there, resting his oxen near the stream. He watched Sankika in silence for the better part of an hour, then asked, "Are you guarding this place, venerable one?" Sankika looked up with the faintest smile. "I am not guarding," he said, "but I remain. And if someone were to threaten you, I would remain." The merchant frowned. "That is not safety." Sankika dipped his hand into the stream, letting water run through his fingers. Then perhaps safety is not what changes others. Perhaps it is presence. Since that day, others have come not to challenge, but to sit. No sign invites them. No teaching is given. Yet one by one, travelers linger, some for minutes, some for hours. A few return days later, bringing nothing but their burdens and the wish to lay them down without needing words. There is no gate here, no lock, no challenge, no keeper, but something in this place holds as if by quiet force, and the monk who never moves guards it only by being. He is not watching, but somehow he sees. The heat that day presses low over the trees, heavy like a hand placed on the crown of the forest. Dust rises in small puffs beneath hurried footsteps. A man walks the road, young but already hardened, a soldier by trade or perhaps by necessity. His armor is worn unevenly, his left boot split at the toe, and a thin sword hangs at his side, swinging like a tail with each impatient step. His name is known to some, but it is not spoken with reverence. He has served, fought, and taken what was offered and more. His presence on the road stirs a hush in those who pass him. Children slip behind their mothers. Traitors lower their eyes. He does not speak to them. He walks fast, like a man trying to leave his own thoughts behind. Then, around the bend, he sees the figure beneath the tree. Sankika. The monk sits as he always does, unmoved, neither tense nor slack, as though time itself flows around him rather than through him. The soldier slows instinctively, not from caution, from something else. His hand touches the hilt of his sword, not drawn, but remembered. His body does not feel in danger, yet his breath catches in a way he doesn't understand. The monk lifts his gaze. Their eyes meet, and in that still meeting, something happens, not a spark, not a clash, not recognition, just pause, the kind that unsettles the bones. The soldier steps closer, testing. You sit in the open, he says, voice rough from travel, alone, no protection. Do you not fear who walks this road? Sankika does not blink. I sit where I breathe, he replies, and I breathe where I sit. The words are simple, but they do not land where the soldier expects. They do not invite argument. They do not resist him. They settle, as if placed gently in the space between them. The soldier scoffs, but the sound is uncertain. You speak in riddles. You must know this place was once ruled by blades. Sankika nods once. Yes, that is why I sit. The soldier frowns. Do you think peace comes from pretending danger doesn't exist? No, the monk says, his voice soft. Peace comes from not bringing danger into every place we go. That lands differently, not like a retort, more like a mirror. The soldier shifts. Something inside him tugs sideways, like a knot in the chest that can't be pulled loose by force. I could harm you, he says, half as a threat, half as a question. You could, Sankika agrees, his hands still resting one in the other, and if that would ease what you carry, I would not resist. The wind moves then, a brief breath through the trees. A leaf falls between them. The soldier watches it land. He does not speak. What disturbs him most is not the monk's words, but his calm. It is not defiance. It is not fear. It is not even courage. It is absence. The absence of armor, of resistance, of all the things the soldier has built himself around. And now he stands there, sword heavy on his hip, heart louder than his thoughts, staring at a man who asks nothing of him and yet leaves him with no place to hide. The sword remains at the soldier's side, untouched. His hand no longer hovers near it. He stands like a man who has knocked on a door and found it already open, and beyond it not a room, not an answer, but a mirror too still to lie. Sankika does not speak again. He merely sits as the breeze moves through the leaves overhead, rustling softly like robes shaken free of dust. His eyes do not waver, nor do they press. They receive, they reflect, and in their stillness, the soldier feels something foreign press against his ribs, not the sheath, not the weight of metal, but the slow and steady ache of being seen without defense. The silence stretches, but it is not empty. It breathes between them, light and wide. The soldier shifts his stance. I was once told, see, he says suddenly, voice lower, that monks speak in parables, stories to dress up teachings. He smirks faintly, half in mockery, half in invitation. Do you have one, monk? Sankika's gaze softens not from indulgence, but from kindness. He speaks as if to the air between them. There is a story of a candle, he begins. The soldier raises an eyebrow. It sat in a dark room beside a sword. The sword gleamed in the blackness, proud of its sharpness. It mocked the candle, called it fragile, weak, fleeting. But the candle did not argue. It simply lit itself. The monk pauses, then adds, the sword laughed until its blade began to melt in the heat. The soldier is quiet, not offended, not amused, just quiet. He looks down, as if seeing his own shadow for the first time, then back at the monk. I suppose the sword should have stayed in its sheath, he mutters, a ghost of a smile flickering at the edges. Sankika shakes his head, almost imperceptibly. No, the sword had its reasons for being sharp, but even steel softens in warmth. Not all flames destroy. The forest seems to lean in closer now, the breeze brushing through the space like a curtain moving between two worlds. The soldier's shoulders ease, his weight shifts to his heels, and in that subtle tilt of posture, something inside him lets go, not in surrender, in recognition. He studies the monk again, not with suspicion, not even with curiosity, but with something gentler, as one might study a quiet stream and realize they've been thirsty all morning. You don't preach, the soldier says. Sankika nods. Sometimes the most violent part of us is the need to explain. The soldier laughs softly, not loud, just once. The sound is dry, almost surprised. You're dangerous in your own way. The monk bows his head slightly, and the leaf canopy above shivers, scattering light like coins onto the forest floor. No, Sankika says, only present. The soldier looks at his sword not with guilt, but with a gaze emptied of pride. He does not draw it. He does not discard it. He simply breathes, deeper now, as if the air itself had changed, and though he cannot name what he has encountered, he knows that he will leave this clearing different. The soldier stands beneath the tree, his fingers grazing the hilt of his sword, not with intent, but with memory. It is the first time he has touched it without needing it, without hiding behind it. The leather grip feels worn, familiar, but his hand does not close around it. It simply rests there, open, as if offering farewell to something unspoken. He looks again at the monk. Sankika has not moved. His robe gathers gently at his ankles, soft folds like riverbanks containing still water. His breath is slow, his gaze unfocused now, not in disinterest, but in the way one listens to wind through branches, or to the sound of something falling into place inside another person. The soldier lowers his hand from the hilt. It happens not as a choice, but as a response as naturally as blinking or letting out a long-held breath. No defiance, no drama, just the settling of a moment that no longer needs to prove itself. He does not sit. He does not ask for teaching. He simply steps back, as if giving space to what has just been allowed to breathe. He feels no victory, no defeat, only quiet, and in that quiet, something ancient within him softens like frost, giving way beneath spring light. A pair of squirrels dart across the path behind him. The forest stirs but does not intrude. The wind has shifted slightly, warm now, the kind of warmth that doesn't scorch, but lingers. The soldier takes another step back. His sword swings faintly at his side lighter, somehow, not because its weight has changed, but because the hand that once clung to it no longer does. He glances once more at the monk and speaks without raising his voice. I used to believe fear kept the road safe. Sankika's eyes meet his, calm as ever. It keeps people away, but not safe. The soldier nods, slowly, thoughtfully. Then he turns, not sharply, not as a soldier retreating, but like someone remembering their way home. He does not look back again, but as he walks, his footsteps leave no hurry in the dust. The birds do not fly away as he passes. The trees no longer feel like sentinels, but companions. The sword at his hip still swings, but it does not lead him. Behind him, the clearing remains unchanged. The monk still sits, unmoved by victory, untouched by admiration. His stillness is not the kind that waits. It is the kind that stays. And in the hours that follow, others will pass the same bend in the forest road. They will glance at the figure under the tree. Some will pause, some will sit, some will say nothing at all, but feel something softens in their chest, like a knot they didn't know was there, untying without pain. No one will speak of a soldier, but they will sense it, some echo in the air, some hush that lingers after a fire has burned low and gone out without smoke. A hush that says something here has changed, not by force, but by being fully, quietly seen. Days pass, then weeks. The forest does not change, not in the way cities change, not with noise or construction or the churn of coin, but something subtle has shifted along the road where Sankika sits. The travelers still come, but fewer hurry, fewer clench their fists or narrow their eyes. Some pause without knowing why. Others find themselves stepping more lightly, as if the very earth near the tree had become soft with listening. No signs are posted, no teachings are nailed to the bark, and yet the road has become a place people return to, not because they must, but because they are drawn, not to learn a doctrine, but to rest beside someone who carries nothing but presence. A farmer, once skeptical, now sends his sons to sit there before planting season. A widow who never spoke to monks begins leaving fruit by the roots of the Bodhi tree, and among them, occasionally, someone passes who carries no offering in hand, only turmoil in the chest. They sit, they breathe, and they leave changed not always in ways they can explain, but in ways they cannot forget. There are no debates here, no declarations, only one man sitting by a tree, unmoved by praise or mockery, allowing the world to move around him without needing to push back. His calm is not for show. It is simply the stillness of someone who no longer needs to win. And it is that very stillness which begins to ripple outward. Far from the forest bend, in a city of courtyards and sandalwood halls, another figure moves, not a soldier, not a beggar, but a woman of sharp mind and sharper tongue. Her name is Kama, known for her words, her wit, her ceaseless need to challenge every claim she hears. She has never been to Sankika's tree, and yet a question has begun to stir in her. Not one she asks others, one she asks herself, alone at dusk. What remains when you no longer need to be right? Let us follow her now, not with answers, not with arguments, but with the soft hush of a voice, just before it chooses to fall silent. Let us hear what happened the day Kama stopped debating. The boy walks softly into the first light of dawn. His bare feet press into the cool earth outside Padilla's garden wall, where dew still clings to the stones. He is small and quiet, a new servant in a house too large to notice when one like him rises early, wrapped loosely in his threadbare shawl. He carries something close to his chest, a monk's alms bowl, left behind in the garden the day before. He had found it near the stone bench, where hibiscus petals had fallen like red silk. At first, he only stared. It was not something meant for him, yet no one else had seen it. No one else had touched it, and the way it sat there simple, round, empty, it felt like something waiting to be returned. He had thought of telling the steward, thought of placing it quietly in the storeroom, but something in him, small and still, urged otherwise. So he cradled the bowl with both hands and stepped past the servants' quarters, through the side gate, and onto the open road. No one stopped him. No one asked where he was going. The morning was too early for questions. The sky above is pale and clear, as if the night had exhaled and not yet drawn in its next breath. He walks slowly, careful not to trip on the stones. Each step is uncertain but steady, like a thought forming before words. The bowl rests against his ribs, not heavy, but present, like a story not yet told. He remembers something his mother once whispered while they sat beside their village fire. If you borrow something sacred, even by accident, she said, return it as if it were your own heart. He didn't understand her then. He wasn't sure he understands now. But this bowl, this journey, it feels like it belongs to that kind of silence. A dog barks in the distance. A cart creaks on a far road. But mostly, the world is quiet. And in that quiet, the boy walks toward where he thinks the monks might be, toward the place beyond the trees, where robes the color of old earth move without sound. He does not know the name of the monk. He does not know if the bowl will be missed. He only knows that it must go back. And so he walks, not for praise, not for coin, only because something in him says a bowl is not just a bowl when it teaches you how to carry it. The road curves gently beyond the last stone of Badia's estate, winding eastward through groves of neem and tamarind. The boy walks slowly, not because he is afraid, but because he wants to remember every step. The bowl presses against his side, wrapped in the corner of his shawl. Its roundness feels like a breath he hasn't fully exhaled. There is no one guiding him, no map in his hand, only the quiet pull of rightness, like water drawn downhill without being told where to go. He passes early traders, setting up stalls, men hauling baskets of ginger, clay, and dried figs. A woman with a baby tied to her hip watches him briefly, her eyes landing on the bundle in his arms. She says nothing, but her gaze lingers with a kind of question. The boy doesn't answer it. He only nods, bows slightly, and keeps moving. His silence, for once, feels full. As he reaches the edge of the town, a man calls out from a wagon, "Where are you off to with that bowl? Boy, selling it." The voice is not unkind, just curious. One of those questions grown-ups ask to test if a child is paying attention to the world's games. The boy stops for a moment and shakes his head. Returning it, he says softly. The man raises an eyebrow, chuckles, and waves him on. "You'll learn," he mutters, turning back to his cart. But the boy is already walking again, not angry, not ashamed, just quieter. The dust rises around his ankles. The road becomes a path, and the path becomes a trail through low trees, their leaves brushing his shoulders like blessings. His feet begin to ache. Pebbles bite into his soles, and for a moment he wonders if he should turn back. No one would notice. No one had told him to do this. But as he looks down at the bowl, still warm from where his arm has held it close, the thought passes. Some things don't need instruction. Some things are their own reason. He stops to rest beside a fallen log, the bowl beside him on the grass. Around him, the forest is light with morning birdsong and the distant crackle of branches touched by breeze. He breathes in deeply, tasting something clean like wood smoke that never turned into fire. In that moment, he thinks of how he used to carry water for his mother from the village stream. The water would slosh and spill, but she never scolded him. "Even what you lose on the way," she once said, "has already watered something unseen." He looks at the bowl again, now lit from above by filtered sunlight. It has carried nothing but silence all this way, and yet somehow it feels fuller now than when he began. He picks it up with both hands again and continues walking, toward where the path opens wide, toward a tree in the distance, beneath which someone quietly waits, not for a bowl, not for a boy, but for something far simpler, the unfolding of a moment just like this. The path widens near the bend, and the trees step back, opening into a small clearing where light rests easily upon the earth. There, beneath a broad-leaved Bodhi tree, sits a monk. His robe is the color of dry bark, faded and frayed at the edges. His legs are folded, his back straight, but his face is soft with ease, like a stone worn smooth by years of rain. The boy pauses at the edge of the clearing. The bowl now feels heavier in his arms, not with weight, but with meaning. He steps forward slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet that seems to breathe with the leaves. The monk does not move, but his eyes lift calm, unsearching, present. He sees the boy, but he does not speak. The boy kneels before him, unwrapping the bowl and placing it gently on the ground, as if returning something sacred to the earth itself. For a moment, neither of them moves. The wind lifts a corner of the monk's robe, then lets it fall again. A bird calls twice from above and goes silent. "I found it," the boy says at last, his voice small but clear. "In the garden. I think it's yours." The monk tilts his head slightly, looking at the bowl the way one might look at a leaf fallen into their lap. He nods not as confirmation, but as recognition. "You carried it far." The boy shrugs, though his shoulders are tired, It didn't feel right to leave it. The monk smiles, not broadly, but as if warmed by something familiar. And yet you could have. No one would have known. I would have, the boy replies. A silence follows, not awkward, not empty, just space, the kind of space where something true can settle. You remind me of a lesson we once taught with an empty bowl, the monk says. Finally, when it is full, you cannot put anything more into it. When it is cracked, it leaks. But when it is clean and empty and carried with care, it can hold the sky. The boy looks down at the bowl. It is simple, rounded, weathered, unremarkable, but suddenly he sees his own journey in its surface, the dust from the road, the warmth of his hands, the moments when he nearly turned back, and now, resting in this clearing, the bowl looks whole. Why didn't you come back for it? He asks. The monk gazes at him, not surprised by the question, because not everything that is forgotten is lost. Sometimes what is left behind walks its own way home. The boy sits back, legs folded, mirroring the monk without knowing why. The wind carries the scent of tamarind leaves and warm dust. Neither of them speaks again for a long time. There is nothing more to explain. The bowl has been returned, but in the giving, something else has been received. The boy walks home with empty hands. The bowl no longer rests against his ribs, yet he feels heavier than when he left, and lighter too. Not the heaviness of burden, but the fullness of something unnamed. The path seems quieter now, or maybe he's just hearing more clearly. The sound of wind in the grasses, the buzz of insects moving like invisible threads through the air, the soft scuff of his feet, now sore and dusted gray, moving step by step without hurry. There's nothing in his arms, and yet something in him holds still. As he passes the place where he'd stopped to rest that morning, he thinks again of his mother's words, the ones about water lost on the way, how even spilled drops nourish something unseen. He hadn't understood then, but today he thinks perhaps he does. The bowl had been empty. The monk hadn't asked for it. No one had praised him. But the act of returning it without command, without reward, had watered something quiet inside him, something that had never been named. A squirrel darts across the path. A fig falls with a thump in the brush. The boy does not flinch. He simply watches. He notices, and in that noticing, he no longer feels like just a boy running errands in a stranger's house. He feels like someone who knows how to carry something gently, even if only for a little while. He wonders what the monk is doing now, still sitting, still listening to the tree's silence. He pictures the bowl resting on the monk's lap or by his side. It is not gleaming. It is not sacred in appearance, but in its round, quiet way, it had shown him how to walk with care, not just for things, but for the steps themselves, and for the silence between them. As he nears the city gate, the road grows busier, wheels creak, merchants call out. A boy herding goats shouts at a stubborn one, and yet, none of it breaks the stillness in him. It simply moves around him, like river water curling past a stone. He thinks about how easy it would be to forget this feeling, to let it slip through the cracks of daily chores and shouts and rules. But something in him has shifted, not loudly, not all at once, like how a door, slightly open, lets in the light without ever swinging wide. He walks a little slower now, not to delay, but to remember the bowl was never empty. He realizes it had always held something the chance to give it back. And even now, with nothing in his hands, he feels the shape of that bowl in his breath, in his step, in the way his eyes see the dust as something soft rather than dirty, as something that rests instead of clings. The boy returns as the sun leans westward, casting long, warm shadows across the stone walls of Badia's estate. He slips through the side gate unnoticed. No one has missed him. No voices call his name. In the corner of the courtyard, two servants argue quietly over grain. A pot boils in the kitchen, forgotten for a moment. The day has gone on without him. And yet, he walks differently now. His feet are tired, his shawl dusted, but his step no longer drifts. He moves with a quiet knowing, not loud, not proud, just present, as though he now walks with the path, not merely on it. He returns to the place he started the garden, near the hibiscus tree. The bench still sits beneath its usual shade, and the breeze still plays lightly with the branches. Nothing here has changed, and yet, in the boy's chest, something no longer wavers. He sits for a while beside the tree, knees pulled to his chest, eyes tracing the curve of a fallen petal. He doesn't need to speak about the monk, or the road, or the bowl. It's enough to have walked it, enough to have returned it, enough to know he can return things quietly, completely, even when no one sees. And it is in this still moment, when the world seems to exhale and grow soft, that he notices something near the gate. A young monk is standing there, not the same one he met earlier, but different. His robes are clean but faded, and he leans gently against the wall, as if not quite waiting and not quite leaving. There is no guard near the gate, no steward asking questions, and yet the monk stands there with perfect ease, as though the very act of being still were its own protection. The boy watches him for a long while, wondering what kind of gate this is, that one may pass through without resistance, and yet feel changed on the other side. Let us walk toward that gate now, dear one, where no one demands your name, where no one bars your way, where calm itself keeps the threshold. Let us listen for the story of the monk named Sankika, the one who stood without fear and taught others to pass through.